Fear thrives in the minds of the aimless. When a person lacks clear direction, every shadow becomes a threat, and every decision feels like a risk too great to take. But the moment one defines a purpose so vivid, so emotionally charged that it consumes the mind, fear loses its grip. A definite purpose gives birth to courage. It turns hesitation into forward motion and confusion into certainty. It becomes the guiding light that burns away the fog of doubt. A man with purpose does not allow fear to sit at the table of his mind. He does not entertain the whispers of failure because his vision is too loud. When you act as if you fear nothing, you don't eliminate fear. You replace it with a mission that matters more. Purpose is power. It channels energy, thought, and emotion toward a goal so compelling that fear becomes a distraction, not a dictator. Those who drift through life chasing nothing in particular are often the ones paralyzed by fear. They worry what others think, they doubt their own worth, and they shrink in the face of opportunity. But those who have made up their minds about what they want, those who see their goals with clarity, do not freeze when fear knocks. They move forward not because they don't feel fear, but because they have something greater to fight for. Clarity creates momentum. When the mind is focused on a specific goal, it begins to summon ideas, people, and opportunities that align with that goal. It becomes magnetic. And fear, which thrives in confusion and uncertainty, loses its power in the face of clear intention. Acting fearless is not about arrogance, it is about alignment. When your actions align with a greater purpose, you step into a version of yourself that fear cannot influence. There is a kind of transformation that happens when you decide what you want with absolute certainty. It changes your posture, your voice, your presence. You no longer walk into rooms wondering if you belong. You walk in knowing you have something to offer. This kind of belief doesn't come from ego. It comes from conviction. An internal agreement that your vision is real and worth pursuing with your full heart, regardless of how fear tries to argue otherwise. To act as if you fear nothing is to say, I have something more important to do than listen to fear today. It is to allow your vision to grow so big that it drowns out the noise of insecurity and doubt. This is not a mental trick, it is a decision made daily to place your focus on what moves you forward rather than what holds you back. Purpose fuels action, and action silences fear. When you act with purpose, you do not need to move as if. Nothing can stop you. Fear is not defeated by strength alone. It is dissolved by belief. The mind, when saturated with faith, becomes immune to fear's influence. It is not that fear disappears. Rather, it loses its power to paralyze. Faith becomes the shield that guards the mind, the fuel that powers forward motion when the path is unclear. It is the inner knowing that, despite appearances, things are working in your favor. When a person believes deeply enough, fear begins to retreat, unable to coexist in the presence of unwavering certainty. This kind of faith is not built overnight. It is cultivated through repetition, through experience, and most importantly, through conscious choice. Every day presents an opportunity to believe or to doubt. Every decision becomes a declaration of what you choose to trust. To act as if you fear nothing is to place your faith not in luck, but in your ability to respond, to adapt, and to persist. It is to believe that within you lies a power greater than the challenge before you. True faith speaks in silence. It does not scream for reassurance or beg for guarantees. It simply acts. It moves forward even when there is no visible path because it trusts the process. This kind of belief isn't naive. It's discipline. It is the product of a mind that has been trained to focus on possibilities rather than limitations, on solutions rather than problems. Fear feeds on uncertainty, but faith creates a new kind of certainty, one that is not dependent on evidence, but on expectation. The person who acts fearless isn't someone who never doubts, but someone who has learned to override doubt with vision. They see beyond the temporary, and their actions are rooted not in what is, but in what can be. That is the power of faith. It allows you to act not based on the world you see, but based on the world you intend to create. There is a creative force activated when one believes without hesitation. It awakens ideas. It sharpens intuition. It attracts people, situations, and breakthroughs that align with that belief. The world begins to respond to the energy of conviction. When you act as if you fear nothing, you send a message to yourself and to life itself that you trust where you're going, and that trust becomes the invisible bridge between where you are and where you want to be. It's not about pretending problems don't exist. It's about refusing to be ruled by them. Faith whispers, there's a way, even when all doors seem closed. It allows you to walk into uncertainty with your head high, not because you know the outcome, but because you've decided that no matter what, you will move forward. That quiet resolve, that internal agreement with possibility, is more powerful than fear will ever be. Faith does not require perfect conditions, it creates them. Courage is not something you wait to feel. It is something you create through action. The mind does not grow stronger by thinking alone. It strengthens itself through doing. When you act as if you fear nothing, even when fear lingers beneath the surface, you engage in a powerful transformation. You begin training your subconscious to accept a new version of reality, one where fear no longer holds the reins. Each courageous step, no matter how small, sends a signal that you are no longer willing to be governed by hesitation or doubt. Every person who has ever accomplished anything great begun before they felt fully ready. They stepped forward without the guarantee of success. They spoke when their voice shook. They launched before the plan was perfect. Why? Because action generates its own momentum. What begins as uncertain movement becomes bold execution through repetition. The habit of action overrides the habit of fear. When fear is allowed to lead, the body freezes, the mind races, and opportunities slip away. But when you choose to act deliberately and consistently, you start teaching yourself that movement is safe, that progress is possible. Over time, what once required intense effort becomes second nature. Acting courageously becomes a habit, not a gamble. The brave aren't born. They're built, one decision at a time. Most people wait for a feeling of confidence to arrive before they begin. But confidence is the result of action, not the prerequisite. You build belief in yourself by witnessing your own behavior. When you speak up, show up, or take the leap, even while afraid, you gain undeniable evidence of your own strength. You prove to yourself that you can handle uncertainty, that you can survive discomfort, and that the story fear tells you is rarely true. The beauty of acting fearless is that it reshapes the way your mind processes risk. Instead of defaulting to avoidance, you start leaning into challenge. You develop resilience. You begin to seek out growth instead of retreating to comfort. It's not about recklessness. It's about becoming comfortable with discomfort. Growth is always found on the other side of fear, and action is the bridge that gets you there. Pretending to be fearless is not a lie. It is a strategy. It is a conscious decision to model the behavior you desire until it becomes real. You speak with authority until your voice naturally carries confidence. Over time, the difference between pretending and being disappears, and the fear that once seemed overwhelming becomes nothing more than background noise. The mind learns through repetition. It learns what you teach it, and every time you act courageously, you are writing a new lesson. You are reinforcing a new standard for yourself, one where fear does not decide your direction. And the more you practice, the more automatic it becomes. Courage, then, is not the absence of fear. It is the mastery of it through deliberate, repeated action. The greatest battlefield you will ever face is the one within your own mind. Every thought, every belief, every inner whisper has the power to either build you up or tear you down. To act as if you fear nothing is not just about what you do on the outside, it's about what you allow to take root inside. If you do not take command of your thoughts, they will take command of you. And fear, if left unchallenged, becomes the ruler of that inner world. Fear does not need facts to thrive. It only needs access. It creeps in through moments of doubt, through hesitation, through the stories you replay about why you might fail or why you're not enough. If those thoughts are left unchecked, they multiply, they grow louder, more convincing, until your reality becomes shaped by limitation rather than potential. But when you decide to control your mind, you take back the power to choose which thoughts deserve your attention. It starts with awareness. You must begin to notice the moment fear tries to speak, when it tells you to shrink, to wait, to avoid risk. You respond, not with panic, but with purpose. You redirect your mind. You replace that fearful suggestion with one rooted in strength, clarity, and conviction. This is not a passive process. It is active, deliberate, and daily. You train your mind like a muscle through repetition and intention. One of the most effective tools in this process is the power of suggestion. Not the kind that comes from others, but the kind that comes from within. The words you speak to yourselves, especially in moments of doubt, are forming the blueprint of your identity. When you affirm strength, courage, and belief, you begin to rewire your mental programming. The more you repeat it, the more real it becomes. The subconscious mind does not question, it accepts, and what it accepts, it begins to manifest. When you act as if you fear nothing, you are essentially commanding your mind to align with courage. You are saying, this is the standard now. This is how we move forward. And with every action taken under that standard, you gain proof that fear is not the authority you are. The mind begins to follow your lead instead of dictating your limits. Discipline plays a vital role in this transformation. You cannot expect to master your mind by accident. You must guard it against negativity, against comparison, against the influence of voices that feed fear. What you read, what you watch, who you listen to, all of it leaves a mark. You must choose to fill your mental environment with thoughts that empower rather than weaken. Control over the mind doesn't mean fear will never show up again. It means you'll recognize it when it does, and you'll know how to respond. You'll see it for what it is, a signal, not a sentence. And instead of retreating, you'll rise. Because the mind you have trained no longer bows to fear. It leads with vision, discipline, and unstoppable will. In the end, fear is not the enemy. It is the invitation. It stands at the doorway of growth, testing your resolve, asking how badly do you want what you say you want, and the answer is never in what you feel. It is always in what you do. To act as if you fear nothing is not a denial of fear, but a declaration of power. It is the choice to rise again and again in the face of doubt, uncertainty, and discomfort. It is the mindset of those who refuse to be average, not because they were born different, but because they decided to live differently. Every time you choose courage over comfort, belief over hesitation, and action over anxiety, you are changing your future. You are shaping a new identity. One forged not in ease, but in effort, and with each brave choice, the old fears lose their voice, becoming whispers in a story you no longer live by. You begin to move with clarity, speak with conviction, and pursue your goals with a fire that fear cannot extinguish. This is how transformation happens, not in an instant, but in the discipline of showing up like the person you are becoming. There will be moments when the path feels unclear, times when the fear feels louder than your faith, but those are not signs to stop. They are signals to dig deeper, to remember why you started, to tap back into the vision that pulled you forward in the first place. Because vision is stronger than fear when you feed it, and the more you align your thoughts, words, and actions with that vision, the more unstoppable you become. Understand this, you are not waiting to become powerful, you already are. The courage, the drive, the fire you seek is already inside of you, buried beneath layers of doubt, fear, and conditioning. But when you choose to act as if you fear nothing, you give yourself permission to unearth that power. You begin living from your potential, not your past. And the world begins to respond, not to who you were, but to who you've decided to be. So carry yourself like the storm hasn't shaken you. Walk like the battle has already been won. Speak like your voice matters, because it does. Move like the door will open, even if you can't see the hinges yet. This is the essence of acting fearless. It's not about being invincible. It's about being unwilling to be ruled by fear anymore. You don't need the absence of fear to take the leap. You need the presence of purpose, the presence of belief, the presence of a mind so trained and so focused that fear becomes background noise to the symphony of your progress. Every great achievement began with someone who was scared and moved anyway. Now it's your turn. Don't wait to feel ready. Don't wait for permission. Act as if you fear nothing until that version of you becomes the only one. That exists